This is the Identity Shockwave podcast, where we explore the journey of self-discovery and the many layers of who we are as we ride this wave called life. 4 questions, real people, endless exploration. I'm your host, Lori Vaitzig. Hey, you made it. Welcome back to the Identity Shockwave podcast, where we explore all things identity and self-discovery and the stories and lessons we learned along the way. My name is Lori, and I'm so stoked that you are here. And while I have your attention, it would mean the absolute world to me if wherever you're listening to this on, if you can just click those 5 little stars or a thumbs up or a comment or a like or whatever you want to call it. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can rate the show 5 stars. All you got to do is click. It's not going to log your name. It's not going to show you like, oh, so-and-so like this, and so people can judge you about what you're listening to. No, I don't even see it. I just see the pretty little numbers of the ratings. So click those 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And did you know on Spotify you can even do that now? Yeah, I had no idea. You can rate 5 stars on Spotify also. And if you're listening on YouTube, hey, YouTube people, give this video a like. I would really appreciate it. And man, I do not like the way I sound when I say those things. But hey, that's part of the game, right? This is the future. This is how we get ourselves out there and exposed to the world. So thanks for playing along. Super appreciate it. And in some exciting news, I'm going to start doing some solo episodes. That's right, you get to hear more of me. And they're going to be my own personal stories of how I relate to identity. Maybe just some like fun stories that like have themes of identity. And I think it's going to be really cool. I'm going to pepper them in between different interviews that I release. And, we're going to get deep, but not too deep. Like, I'm not going to share the things that I would share with my therapist. And if you're listening, hi, Martha. So keep a lookout for those. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to call them. I'm kind of thinking like Lori Identity, like a mix of my name and identity. I don't know. I'm still workshopping it. And honestly, I'm probably just going to go to ChatGPT and get some ideas there. That's what you do. This is the future. This is how we go about these things. I'm embracing AI. Honestly, even as a voice actor, it's kind of like really putting a lot of our work in jeopardy. But honestly, we can work together. We can make this be a really good thing. And I've honestly loved what I've been doing with ChatGPT. I had it write me a whole workout plan and like a meal guide. And dude, I lost 4 pounds in the past month, so it's helping me. I think it can help you too. Anyway, that's my spiel. Let's get to today's episode. Today, our guest is, in my opinion, someone that just radiates positivity and good vibes. This guy has got stories. Like every time I sit down with him, we're just talking about something profound or something wild and ridiculous that's happened in his life. Like this is one of those people that has lived 1,000 lifetimes on his short time on this planet. And even after we stopped recording, he kept going on with like these amazing stories. I'm like, I wish we kept recording, dude. But we'll keep those to ourselves. That'll be our little secret, all right? But I think you're really going to enjoy him. And in the episode, you'll hear me describe him as a beacon of Southern California culture. And I'm a little embarrassed that I said that, but honestly, it's kind of true. Me being a transplant and still, even after 10 years, still like understanding Southern California culture. I like making it seem like it's this foreign thing. It's not. But people that grew up here just have this really airy, carefree, good vibes way about them. And to me, our guest just embodies all of that. I think you're going to really like him. He's such a trip. He's got some exciting things in the work. You can catch him on Abbot Kinney Boulevard outside of what was the MedMen. They closed down. They closed down all of 2 stores in Southern California. R.I.P. weed industry. Anyway. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lonely Barber himself, Ryan Rich. Ryan Rich, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, I was so excited to talk to you because I know you got a lot to say, so I'm sure it'll be Really, really fun. Let's get to know you though. Let's kick it off with if you could boil it down to a few words, how would you introduce yourself? What's your elevator pitch?
So my elevator pitch would be, my name is Ryan Rich. People call me the Lonely Barber. I reside in beautiful Los Angeles, California for at least the next 2 years until I get completely and thoroughly sick and tired of what's going on in the state right here. And then I'll move on to greener pastures. But for right now, this is home. I am a barber, provide services to people of all types here in the Los Angeles area, which is fantastic. I get to provide a duality of services from elite house calls in the hills of Beverly down to people coming directly to me on Abbot Kinney for a more realistic price tag. And it's a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun doing it, and I'm really blessed. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you have a unique situation going on where you're actually a traveling barber. You have like a mobile barber shop.
I do. I have a mobile barbershop. It's a 2015 Mercedes Sprinter van that's been converted into a very elegant looking, in my personal opinion, barbershop on wheels. Very Woodsley. If you're into the cabins, you'd enjoy the interior of the van. It's got kind of a modern minimalist with a bit of Swedish design and a cabin influence. So it's nice. It's a fun setup.
It is a bit Scandinavian, isn't it? With the nice wood floors. Like, if you could just have a visual in your head right now, he's got this, it's just so pristine. You have a sink in the back, these nice wood floors, a beautiful barber chair in the middle. And when you pull up to your van on Abbot Kinney, which is usually where you're posted up, it's just, I feel like, maybe this is more common these days, but yours is just, it's just so nice.
It's getting more common. I do think, and I'm gonna sound very arrogant for saying this, but I think it is the truth. The barbershop is very well curated. I think that on an execution level, I had time. That was the thing. It's one of those weird pandemic babies where I just, I had nothing but time. And so I got to sit there and really spend 2 years on it, where I think that now the flame is kind of underneath people to get it up and running and start generating revenue. And so I was in this weird transitionary state starting it, and I had the advantage of sort of being able to sit there on my hands and just kind of wait it out and really get it dialed in. So aesthetically, it is very beautiful. And I get asked the question quite a bit, how did you design the thing? Like, where did that inspiration come from? And I was like, I literally Googled images of saunas and Scandinavian design. That's the truth of it. So
No shit.
yeah, saunas. Yep.
Nice. What a vibe. That's awesome. And I have to mention this, speaking of pandemic babies, just thinking about this, my husband Eric, who is Harworth Design, designed Ryan's logo. And I think you were one of his very, very first projects. And he started Harworth Design in 2020 as well. So it's kind of
Yeah.
serendipitous that you both, started at the same time and now you grew your businesses to be what they are
Of
today. So that's
all
pretty
the
dope.
compliments that I get on the van, the number one thing I get is, "The van's really cool, man, but dude, the logo is so dope." And I'm like, yeah, and I love telling that story because Eric's so fun to work with and he's such an inspiration. I mean, a lot of people don't probably know this, but Eric's art has been getting viewed for long before 2020. I mean, some of people's favorite artwork is Eric's, especially if you're in the snowboard community, action sports community in general. But I think, yeah, we were one of his first contracts, like off on his own. And he's like, "Well, what do you want to do with the logo?" I said, I really want it to be just kind of a combination of my tattoos. So it's actually the eye on the back of my hand, the scissors on the side of my face going through it, the tear, and yeah, it kind of sums it up.
Oh, that's awesome. It's very sweet of you to say all those nice things. But, you know, I like it. It seems like you're more than just a barber, though. I feel like you're more of a lifestyle connoisseur. And I would also say a beacon of Southern California culture. And, being here and growing up here, especially, you live that life. And I think that's something that really sets your business apart because aside from just, barbering on the street and going to people's homes, you also sometimes like carry merch and stuff too, right?
Totally. Yeah, no, we design and create merch and one-off things for people to kind of enjoy. I've slowed down on it just a little bit because, you'll it's expensive to do apparel now. Screen printing alone in bulk is become difficult. So now I kind of, I have a big archive of things that I'd like to implement in the future, and I'm strategizing ways to bring that into a more consistent reality, you know? Right
Mhm.
now, it's kind of like we do fun things for fun people, and it's cool to do it, and the people that buy it, they appreciate it, and they always support it. But, you know, it's I've toyed with ideas, but the best way to cop some merch is really just to come by the shop and see what we have on the rack, because there's usually something fun on there, and it probably won't be available online. People get really frustrated because I post it on the internet and they go, "How do I get this?" And I go, "Be in Venice."
Nice. I want to go back to the lifestyle bit a bit because you've also worked at some incredible barbershops in town that, it's different from your dad's barbershop back in the day when, like, yeah, it was kind of a boys' club. Men would go in and just chit chat, shoot the shit. But it's more of an elevated experience these days. And I feel like you deliver that on like every level. Not only are you, one, getting a pro haircut, solid fade, but you're also like, you're on Abbot Kinney. You're in the middle of Venice and then you're in this middle of this beautiful van. People are passing you by. I feel like there's just like so much about it. And I think that speaks a lot to who you are also, just wanting to, deliver a really solid experience and also like enjoy it yourself too.
Totally. Yeah. And I think especially in the men's cutting realm, right? Because it's like, for guys, the end goal is definitely image. It's not to discount the fact that that's important, but I think the experience is much more important. Guys don't have a lot of therapeutic spots or places to come in where they get to spend an intimate amount of time with an individual that's maybe not completely part of their world, right? So a judgment free zone. And let's face it, like, some guys are really good about it, right? They want to go get therapy. They want to go seek out places to talk. But a barbershop is kind of one of those places I think where, like, men, they have to kind of go, right? Because image is a part of the realm. And then inadvertently they get to spend a long period of time having discussions just to fill the gap while the service is going down. And that almost is more important to guys, I think, in a lot of ways. And it's funny, like, when I first started doing hair, it was all focus. I want to do the cleanest haircuts. I want to do the best work that I possibly can. And that carries through even to today, right? But I think that at a certain point, I got exposed, and I was very blessed to get exposed to it at a young age. But I worked with a company called Blind Barber that had just transitioned from New York into Los Angeles. And during that time in particular, their focus was really on this kind of elevated lifestyle movement slash uh, get a great service, So I learned really quickly that the things that men in particular were looking for was a mesh between the two. They wanted something that kind of went hand in hand, and that changed my outlook on it. So the quality was never sacrificed. It wasn't that the quality of the work, but the foundation was set with my obsession with doing quality work, and then that kind of took a backseat in the transition into maybe this other avenue of hair is actually more important. Maybe what guys are really looking for is a clean, comfortable atmosphere to have a discussion with somebody that they trust as a confidant, who they know is going to keep their personal and private thoughts personal and private, and allow them to really kind of get it off their chest.
Yeah. And I feel like also just having your hair cut alone, in a sense, you're already being vulnerable. You're being touched by somebody else. So already, like, those barriers are being broken down and you have to really allow yourself to be present in those moments. So I'm sure, and again, you're just such a nice and personable guy. I'm sure people just feel super comfortable with you and I'm sure they just enjoy it so
I
much.
appreciate the compliment. I hope everybody truly feels that way. I'm sure there's one or two out there that are like, "That barber's a dick."
Maybe the store owners on Abbot Kinney that you've been quarreling with for years,
Yeah,
but
they definitely would have some things to say. It's so funny how that's the transition between the community, right? Like, the way that a community perceives somebody versus how other businesses in the area, and it's very split. It's very split. That was something that, as in the brick and mortar side of my career, because there was a period in my career where I was establishing barbershops that were built into actual physical spaces, and that was super fun because it allowed other barbers to propel their careers, and it had a lot of other facets that were really unique to that and that I really enjoyed. But I never had a neighbor complain about me because But then the second that you put it into a van and it's on the street or it's foreign, it's something that they don't fully understand. And like I said, this isn't everybody.
Yeah.
A lot of business owners see it as a viable asset. They see it as, oh my God, this is a place that's on Abbot Kinney, which no barbershop could ever afford to cover the overhead on Abbot Kinney. Let's face it. I mean, in order to generate
Hmm.
$40,000 in a month, you're going to have to up the price to about $600 a haircut and have every chair spinning for the full period of time just to even
It's
pay
wild.
your rent, right? And so, people were leaving Abbot Kinney to go get haircuts other places, oftentimes places that weren't necessarily close to the business. And there's a confidence booster that happens. A lot of the number one thing I've heard from business owners that are supporters of ours is, I really love that if my employee shows up and they aren't feeling confident, we can either pay their haircut or whatever, send them over, and they usually come back more eager to engage with people because they feel that confidence, they feel decompressed, so maybe they're already in a very talkative mood.
Mhm.
Sales increase, and I mean that's not I think it's more, for their mental health. From what I understand from the business owners, it's less of them trying to actually sell more and more of them just trying to have an employee who's maybe having a rough day have a better day. This is the funniest observation of it, and I promise you guys, to the listeners, I swear I don't talk for a million years. I will shut up and let Lori talk at some point. Um, but there it's never the business owners that really dislike us, it's the building owners don't like
Mm.
us. It's the people that see mobile barbershops as, "Oh, this guy's operating on our street," which we pay incredibly high taxes probably and property taxes. I've paid an insane amount to even purchase the building, and this dude shows up and he thinks that he can operate without paying us any money, and my response to that has always been, "Okay, rent me a spot for $12,000 a month. Let's do it. If you can get me in Abbot Kinney at $12,000 a month, which is still incredibly high for a barbershop, I will put in a 7 share barbershop that will be able to generate the revenue it needs for not only myself and our barbers to have a successful, happy life without absolutely snapping our spines." Every single one of them has laughed in my face so far and given me some whole spiel about how I'm out of my mind. So, yeah,
Yeah, and not only that, but like you're bringing foot traffic to the street also. So you think, and you're paying your taxes too. I mean, come on, whatever. You're a legit
that's
business.
right. We pay our taxes. We do everything the way we're supposed to do. It's just the differentiation between, they like to blame it on me. Like, I'm like, dude, you already have a tenant. So, like, what do you care? It's not
Yeah.
like you guys aren't making the money. You have a tenant. And, like, let's face it, in Venice Beach, locals aren't going to Abbot Kinney all the time. The closest they're getting to it is Erewhon. So it's like, it's a real thing. Like, I was just doing my buddy Todd Janscott, shout out to Todd. He's like, dude, I would never end up on Abbot Kinney. Like, this street is totally different than what it was back in the day. Maybe they're going to the Brig at night. Maybe they're going to the Rooster Fish. These are bars for the viewers who aren't here in the Venice Beach area. But other than that, other than the nightlife stuff, people don't really come down unless they have a specific thing in mind.
Mhm.
The barbershop has translated into a lot of people coming in, getting a haircut, feeling good, and saying, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I'll buy a T-shirt to accompany that feeling and really feel fresh for the night." Or, maybe I'll stick around on Abbot Kinney. I'll go have lunch, and so yeah, I've definitely heard that in the past, and I think it is true.
And Venice is not struggling. Venice is doing just fine.
That is
When it,
fine, yeah.
well, I saw on your website, and part of like your branding and everything is hashtag never lonely. And I have a sense of what you mean by that. And I think just through talking to you just now, things we were mentioning earlier, it seems like it definitely applies to your clients and coming to see you. Does it apply to you as well?
Yeah, it applies to me as well. Yeah, I think that being lonely is sort of this acknowledgement of I'm not content with the circumstances of my surrounding, right? Like I feel like I need something external of myself to fill the void and really make the situation that I'm currently in feel okay for me, which isn't something that I personally struggle with. I've been blessed with some experiences within my short period of life that have allowed me to really hone in on just sort of being content with the circumstances that are around. It can always be better, but it can most certainly always be worse. And, just not relying necessarily, enjoying people for what they bring to the table, but not relying on that to be the thing that is my comfort. And so I think that
Sure.
for our clients as well, really with the hashtag Never Lonely stems from giving people a place to come when maybe they are having those thoughts, and really kind of have somebody to talk to if that's something that they are struggling with, which is surprisingly something that a lot of people do struggle with. I, when I was young, I think I definitely struggled with loneliness. I was never kind of comfortable or content with solitude. And as I got older, I think this came from road travels and stuff like that. Like getting in the rig and just sort of hitting the open road is just like I enjoy doing it alone. I enjoy those moments where I'm relying specifically on myself for here. It's really it's emotional. It's hearing your own thoughts. It's self there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's important. I think that that's really the main message behind it, which probably isn't conveyed very well and should be a video topic of its own, is really Never Lonely is sort of just be content, happy with the moment that you are in solitude, and use that as a moment to identify what makes you uncomfortable and how to become comfortable in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I am a very social person, as I know you are too, but I crave that time alone and just to be with myself, to be with my thoughts, and I'm not scared of it,
Yes,
and like some people are very much scared to be alone in their thoughts, and I think it's so healthy to be in that because you need to just sit and process things and not have anything external influencing what you're thinking or feeling. And I think that's just like such a powerful part of who we are and how we go about the world. We need that time for ourselves.
absolutely. Take that time,
Hey,
people.
take the time. Anyway, well, with everything that we've been talking about, you've definitely pivoted throughout your life. You've made some really important decisions for yourself, but has there ever been a decision that you've made that's changed the trajectory of your life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's so many circumstances where I think that life changing has come from, and also what was my own making and what was, kind of a byproduct of other people's opinions of, and I want to preface this. I love my mother. My mother is the absolute best. She's never tried to do anything to hurt or harm me in any way, shape, or form, but she
Mm.
mistakenly, the first memory that I have of being like a really life-saving moment was when I was a young kid. I was frustrated because my father was absentee, or I should say, in and out of my life. My mother was a successful business owner. My father was at one point, but unfortunately fell into the bad habit of using drugs, and sort of in that drug use didn't abandon, but just became kind of not as readily available all the time, maybe when I needed
Sure.
him for
Mhm.
large periods of time, for years at a time. And so I kind of had these frustrations as a young man, which maybe was my first experience with pain, although I wasn't developed enough to really understand how that would affect me later on and my worldview later on. Um,
Are we talking teens, preteens?
Pretty much, I think I was 7 years old when my father fell into the loop of drugs, and so I was pretty young, and I know it affected me from a pretty young age. I wanna say I was going into middle school when my father really started to disappear for large periods of time, and
Those are huge developmental years.
yes, exactly. And so, there's a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. I fell in really bad habits of taking my anger out on other people, getting in fist fights and just treating people badly, not knowing how to treat people. And then also drug abuse, that became
Mhm.
a pretty regular thing. Started with marijuana and then escalated from there, and never really got to a place where it was so severe in a habit that it was really destructive in my life or holding me back, but it was definitely like a focus. I started to slip away from school and think to myself, maybe the fun I'm having with my friends is more important than my studies.
Mhm.
And so my mom, like I said, my mom is the best person in the entire world, has never done
Mhm.
anything intentionally to harm me, but thought that sending me to Utah to a, basically you get kidnapped at like 4 a.m. They drag you off to the airport and they ship you off to Utah. Everybody's seen the Paris Hilton Provo, Utah videos and stuff. And I went
You
to,
did one of those? I just watched a documentary on
it
that.
was a crazy experience, dude. Yeah, it was definitely the first time in my life. I had just had my 17th birthday. My mom saw it as the last year to kind of really save me before I was an adult, which turned out to be one of the most traumatic experiences I think I've ever experienced in my entire life. It was really unrealistically difficult when you don't have the emotional skills to navigate what you're experiencing, and you're also being told that no matter what you do, you can't just call your mom. You can't call your friends. You're isolated. You're with other kids that are of a variation of ages from 11 to 17. um,
Oh, what?
yeah, oh yeah. There was kids there that were 11 years old that had wealthy parents that sort of just saw that place as a way to ship them off, ship their child away so that they were in the custodial monitoring of another group of people versus them having to like actually make life sacrifices and deal with the difficulty of being a parent, all the way to kids that really, I mean, did have problems. And I don't necessarily think that, it's tough because when I was in Logan, there was a lot of kids. My facility was called Logan River Academy, and a little bit different than Provo. Provo's in the desert, but sister companies, definitely related to one another. Mine was a little bit more in the mountains, which is oddly where I think my love and fascination of wildlife and the outdoors really comes from.
Huh.
But it was it was an isolatory moment, and it was definitely one that I remember like being like, "Oh man, this is completely and totally out of my control. I have no control over my circumstance anymore. I'm surrounded by the most horrible, opinionated people who have the worst opinions in the world on an abusive scale, and they're telling you that you're there for treatment, but at the same time, you're sitting there kind of thinking, dude, you're a really sick puppy. Like, you are definitely the one that needs the treatment, not me. And
Yeah.
so that experience was definitely changing. I think, my dad, funny enough, was the one who got me out of there. So
Wow.
a funny thing had happened. My mom never wanted me to be separated from my father. She truly believed that no matter what my father did, a father, he should have access. If he's not, an abuser, which he never was, but she never fought for sole custody of me, I should say, which I think a lot of people suffer with now. They get in a fight and they say, I'm going to use the system in my favor to separate my child, which is another form of abuse. I'm like,
Yeah.
my father had access to me whenever he chose to have that access. But my father was incarcerated during the period of time where the school board and my mother were concocting this concept of sending me to this school. And my father not being available to sign documents and also being a guardian, there was some forgery that went down there with the signatures allowing me to
Mm.
go to this facility. And so when he was released and sober, his first question was, Linda, where's my son? Uh-oh. Well, Ryan's in a school in Utah. And my dad was not having it. I was a lucky one. I mean, I would have left 4 months later, no matter what, because I was going to turn 18 and they couldn't keep me past that. I had already been there for 7 months. Um,
7 months.
7 months, yeah, which is short compared to some of the kids. I remember I met one kid that was 14 years old and he had been there for 4 years.
What?
And he would probably remain there until he turned 18. I mean, he was truly a ward of the Utah Department of Child Education and Labor. I don't know what the hell you would call it, but one of the kids that was sort of sent to this school just simply so his parents could focus on their successful business endeavors and not be burdened by the youth of the family. Typical boarding school
Wow.
stuff. It was pretty wild,
And
but
you can't talk or see your parents during while you're there, right?
they have very heavily monitored phone call windows where once a week you get to jump on the phone. You cannot explain to them the things that you were dealing with. The second that they cut the line and they try to tell your parents, they gaslight the parents into thinking that your kid is a liar
Oh,
when the
Jesus.
truth is, That's a whole episode on its own, man. The
Yeah.
Utah experience is such a trip. Mine, I knew girls that were physically abused in that school. I was not, but the program as a whole was very psychologically abusive.
Yeah.
They had a room called Devo, which was short for development. So when you got in trouble, you went to this room that was the highest point of the school's tower. It had a circular window in it. And this is a really big facility, mind you. It holds 300 to 400 kids. So this is a massive building, the Logan River Academy. And at the top of it was a circular window. You can see it if you look up the photos of Logan River Academy. There's kind of a point at the center of the school. Inside of that point is a room called development. And if you got in trouble, you would be sent to development. And in development, you sat at a desk and you could be there anywhere from 12 hours to a month, 30 days. And the only things that you were able to do was sit there quietly. You'd get a 5-minute period where you get to take a break and get a cup of water, use the restroom or whatever. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2 hours or an hour, but I want to say it was 2 hours actually, where they took the 5-minute break. And all you could do was schoolwork or read therapy books, which doesn't seem like, oh my god, that would be that bad, but that much time sitting at a desk doing specifically schoolwork, like homework, or reading a book about like some other person's opinion on therapy, or life view, it would get really old really fast. If you fell asleep in there, you'd get more time in there. And
That's
of course, you would go
archaic.
back downstairs, you'd go to bed, but you weren't allowed to interact with anybody that was not inside Devo or whatever. If you went downstairs to go to bed, you had to immediately go to bed. If you got caught talking to somebody after hours, immediately you're going more time in Devo. So it got really old really fast.
That is gnarly and seems totally counterintuitive to what the ultimate goal is to like send a kid there to rehabilitate them is what you would think would be happening, but it's quite the opposite. So I can imagine. I mean, you mentioned that like somehow strangely it helped you develop your love for nature and outdoors, but once you got out, I mean, you still were a young man. Did you see life differently? Did you view yourself differently?
I got out and I went nuts. My drug abuse increased tenfold. Everything that my mom had hoped would happen from that situation backfired. I felt like I had missed 17. All of my friends had these experiences that I now had completely and totally missed. Things were still the same, but yet somehow things had really changed for me, and I wasn't satisfied with that. And it would take a long time and some other life experiences that would kind of go down in between before I really became comfortable and content with what I had gone through. It was the start of me coming to that realization. I think at the time I just wasn't quite ready for it, but
Hmm.
it definitely was one of those things that I went kind of nuts right when I got out. I'm like, I got my freedom. It's time to get fucked up, you know? And I was doing cake stands and stuff. Like,
I
yeah.
mean, you're still a kid though. And I want to circle back to my original question because I don't think that was a decision that you made. That was a decision that was forced upon you. So you could say that you breaking out on your own and starting your business would be something that definitely changed the course of your life. I mean, I would imagine. Is there anything else that you can think of that specifically relates to your identity that really just made you turn the other way and go down the different path?
I mean, so you want something that I chose to partake in. I definitely think
Yeah.
nature. Yeah, exploration in nature, fly fishing, always been big into individual sports, whether that be motocross, BMX, skateboarding, surfing, you name it. Those were always things that I really enjoyed as a young man that I chose and I felt like were really my decisions that were healthy. And that turned into exploring, which is where I kind of learned about self therapy. I spent a long time going to therapy courses with other people, discussing my thoughts, feelings, things surrounding that, and then realizing the best therapy for me was going out into nature and just kind of spending some time alone with my thoughts and really contemplating how those are because the weird thing happens when you go to nature, right? Like you go out in the middle of nowhere and all of a sudden you have this realization of like, man, I'm stressing about these bills and I'm stressing about where my life is taking me. And really, none of that shit matters because look at this beautiful backdrop. And like, this is what really actually matters at the end of the day. And so I think that that experience was something that I chose that really has kind of helped me over the years and really made me mentally tougher. I definitely think business, branching out and making the decision to take an entrepreneurial journey versus kind of I won't say one is better than the other because one comes with a lot of sacrifices, right? Like when you decide, I want to do it myself, I have a vision for the way that I think things should be, you're making a lot of sacrifices because
Mm-hmm.
you're jumping off a cliff. You don't know if those are really going to work, and there is
Mm-hmm.
no blueprint. You kind of pick up things along the way from other people that are entrepreneurial that have done it before, and they kind of tell you, "Hey, try it this way," and you go, "Oh, that really works." Some of it you figure out yourself, but I loved my time too when I was an employee working for a company, and that came with its own set of things to really enjoy. But I think that yes, starting in 2015, that was really like, wow, man, we're here. This is going to be a big step, and that caused a lot of growth. That was a scary one. But yeah, I mean, anything that scares you should probably be done. I think like
Hell yeah.
yeah. It's one of
Yeah.
those things. If you have a fear of it, if it's one of those things that you're looking at and you're going, you know, don't go smoke some crack. But like, if it seems like it could be healthy and scary at the same time, go give it a try.
Yeah, for sure. No, I wholeheartedly believe in that, just taking the risk and taking the chance because I also believe in nothing changes if nothing changes. So you gotta just take those leaps of faith, man. Just believe in yourself. And I think that's something else about you that I really admire and appreciate and like is that you believe in yourself and I feel like you have a really good self-awareness of who you are and who you want to be and who you put out to be in the world. So with that, what parts of your identity make you most proud and which have you struggled with the most?
I think that I can be really selfless. I don't do everything for financial gain, which I think is kind of rare, especially this day and age, because everything is a struggle. But they say that there's nothing free in this world, everything comes with a price. And I disagree with that. I mean, I've got a lot of clients that, I will give them a free haircut just to make their day a little bit better, even if they're wealthy. It doesn't really matter. It's like kind of funny. I think that that's a good quality that I have. I care about people. I'm definitely a person that emotionally is invested in the people that I care about,
For
which I
sure.
don't think is a rare characteristic, but I think it's one that's a good characteristic to have in a person. And I think that um, for all the goods that I have, I definitely have some bads. I can be overly aggressive. I can be quick to anger. I can definitely spin out of control in certain moments. And sometimes I feel like I've got it all figured out, and other times I feel like I don't have anything figured out. And I think one of the main things that helps me is just that I'm cognizant of that fact. And it's really hard to get down even when times are tough, and say, oh, it's this way and it's this way forever because it's never this way and this way forever. It's always this is temporary, it's fluid. Sometimes you know it all and sometimes you know nothing, man, and you just got to be cool, calm, and collected with either way. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it means to be human, right? I mean, we're all just spinning on this rock and trying to figure out, each moment day to day and managing our emotions and managing what's coming at us in this crazy, crazy world we're living in. So,
Totally.
but I think you do it with grace. I mean, I don't know those parts of you, but every time I see you, you're always just super positive. And that's another thing I think people love about you is you're always just spreading that PMA, man.
Yeah.
Super positivity, just giving back to others. And you had mentioned something too. I think I recall you also have a client that runs a sober living facility. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you go to him, right?
Yeah.
You go to there and like that's another thing. Again, you give back to people and groups in the community that I think sometimes really need it, and I'm sure just benefit from your services and your positivity so much.
Totally. Yeah, no, I'm really lucky that, and it's interesting, right? Like these people are struggling with some of the most difficult things that a human being can go through. Addiction is definitely one of those things that people don't realize how gnarly that actually is. I think we go, "Oh, well, they made their own bed, they gotta sleep in it," or whatever. Some people can be kind of cold to the circumstances surrounding that, but it can happen to anybody, and it's nice when you get to be an outlet for somebody who's really struggling, and especially as someone that has I always tell them I don't have experience with addiction other than cigarettes. Cigarettes is really the only substance that I've ever abused and had a craving for, but I definitely
Good.
know what it feels like to fall in a cycle and not wanna come down or be stuck in a moment, where, "Oh, man, this is gonna be tough to get off of this," Norcos
Mhm.
was one for me where even more recently in my life was really a challenge. I fell in a really bad habit of taking over the, prescription, opioid, painkillers, and
Mhm.
it was just it's one of those things that after a certain amount of time of being on it, it becomes routine, and it's really hard to break that. It takes a lot of willpower. So yeah, I work with the Graceland Ranch. It's called. It's in Malibu. It's run by a TikTok influencer slash video creator named Pat Ridge, who is part of the band Hyper Crush. He's an amazing dude who's also the most chaotic human being I think I've ever encountered in my entire life. But he would love that I said that. Um, and also a guy with a heart of gold, even though sometimes it doesn't always show. Pat will listen to this and be like, "Fuck Ryan for saying that," but you know what I mean, dude. He's a
I could
self-admitted
get that.
narcissist, so he can't argue it with me. But he does a lot of things that a lot of other people wouldn't invest their time or effort into strictly because he wants other people to have success in life. And I think that's really all you can ask of somebody.
And I know I mentioned earlier that, at least from my perspective, I think you have a really good awareness of yourself. But within that awareness and within coming into your own, who you are today, have you ever felt like a fraud or have you had imposter syndrome?
Every day, every single day. It really is. I mean, because like you said, like people get one version of people, like the public outward appearance surrounded by friends. I will agree. I think I'm a great dude. I'm definitely a really happy person. I put a
Mhm.
smile on so that everybody can enjoy that and try to have a good energy about me. It isn't fake. There's nothing fake about it. It's who I truly am. But the side that people probably don't see as often, but it's still there, is I can be an overly aggressive, self-absorbed individual under certain circumstances, very opinionated. I can also be one of those people that doesn't really have a whole lot of time for alternative worldviews if I don't agree with the happenstance about it. And so definitely gonna avoid what those thoughts are on this thing because they're extremely controversial. But um I can be very set in my ways and very hard to convince otherwise if I think that something is some way. But I think another thing that makes it a beautiful thing is I'm open to hearing about it, right? Because that's part of being a barber is not taking the hardline stance. Like in my personal life, I can be that way, but
Mhm.
behind that chair, listen, everybody's entitled to their opinions. I'm not being paid to give my worldview to people, which I think is something that really makes me good at my job. Is a lot of people probably wouldn't know that about me. This might be the coming out of Ryan's opinion because I'm very quiet. I mean, I just like to listen, and I'll play devil's advocate sometimes, even if it's something I agree on, just to gauge somebody's contentness with the subject and test their
Mhm.
knowledge of it. I
Mhm.
think another cool thing about being a barber is that you get to have these long, drawn out conversations with people. And so you really get to become insightful of their knowledge as well, which is almost like being your own polling station. You're kind of learning a little bit of tidbits and facets from everybody's worldview and kind of making an internal adjustment from that. So yeah, for every good thing that I have, I definitely have equally bad. I should bring Megan in for this pie. I'm sure she could give you a million and one things that Ryan's not perfect for. But I think that those things also, the things that make us not perfect are the things that make us perfect in a weird way. Yeah.
That's really sweet. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And kind of goes back to what I was saying, about you earlier, is that you have a way of disarming people with your generosity, with your positivity. And I feel like you're a storyteller. You are really good at storytelling. You have amazing stories to share. And the times that I've sat down with you, we just talk, man, and we go from here to there to
Yep.
aliens to human rights, we go all over the place, man. And that's what I like about you, though, is that you're really worldly and well-rounded and well-versed, and you have a lot to say about a lot of different things, and you're not shy of those things, but also in the appropriate context too, because you are a business owner and you
delicate.
are.
Yeah, you
You're
gotta be
what?
delicate for people, you know?
Yeah.
Unless it's a UFO video, man. If you got a UFO video, you gotta just run up and show people that, you know? It's just like,
Yeah.
look, I'm just gonna come out and say it to the viewers. I'm not gonna give you a lot of political advice, but don't trust your government, dude. Straight up. They don't care about you. I've cut enough heads of hair. I'm about to lose like 20, 30 clients. I'm telling you right now. Crazy for the viewers. They're gonna be like, dude, this barber is
Who
wild.
who is this guy? Well, I like to end the podcast with asking you the first question that I asked you after having all of this discussion and diving into the deep, deep spirit world of Ryan Rich. Would you still introduce yourself the same way?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I think I would. I still would introduce myself the same way. I think, I'd end it with just be real, That's the main thing that people need to understand in this world. You don't gotta put a front on for anybody, never be embarrassed, but your thoughts are your thoughts, and some of them are personal and private, and others are for everybody, but don't ever question whether or not those are for you or for someone else. Just love yourself and really be stoked on life. Life is beautiful no matter what, man. Lean into hardship. That's the main thing too, is really don't shy away from the things that seem difficult. I always tell people the analogy is like you tell a kid not to touch the stove because the stove is hot, right? And you could tell a kid a million and one times. I don't know how much time you spend around kids, but if you tell a kid, don't touch the stove, best believe they're going to touch that stove at some
Mm-hmm.
point, but they're only ever going to do it one time. And so life is kind of like that, man. Listen, when there's pain or there's discomfort, just know that the most growth is going to come for that because you can't learn from anything comfortable. So I probably, I don't know how I'd end it. I don't know. It's a great
You could
question.
enter. You could enter right there, man.
There we go. I'm going to put the stamp on it. Peace, love, and harmony, people.
Right on, homie. Well, I know it seems like you have a big launch coming up. You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So I've been out with some medical issues that I've been dealing with, and now we're getting back to it. So March 20th, 2024. That's the date we're going back. Trying to think about it. The we is me in the van, by the way. People are gonna be like, "Who's this guy talking about?" It's just him. What is he talking about? The van has its own personality, but we are relaunching on the 20th of this month. So be back at
Right
it.
on.
Yeah,
Lonely Barber back in action.
that's right. That's right. Yep.
Awesome.
Can't
I'll
wait.
be sure to plug your socials too so people know where to find you on Abbot Kinney.
I
That's where
appreciate
you'll
it.
be, yeah?
Huh? Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
All
Yep.
right.
We'll be back.
Awesome. Ryan
Hey.
Rich,
Hey.
you are an enigma.
I know.
Thank you.
Love that.
thank, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time and you sharing yourself.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate you. Have fun, everybody.
You've been listening to the Identity Shockwave podcast, hosted by me, Lori Vaitzig. Catch us next time for a new episode with a different guest that is sure to keep the conversation interesting. A big thank you to Let Me Crazy for letting us use their music. I'll catch you later.
Keep it back.